When you think about Monster Hunter stories, what is one of the first things that probably comes to your mind? For me, it was Pokemon, an RPG where a child goes around collecting pocket-sized monsters and uses them to battle other pocket-sized monsters or various other trainers. Now imagine all this except it was set within the Monster Hunter universe. Charizard? No, now you have a one-eyed Rathalos. Blastoise? Nope, we have a Royal Lidroth. Venusaur? Say hello to, well, there isn't really a grass element in this game, so you get Red Kazoo instead. Just look at that smile. Pokemon was a cultural revolution, and with any form of media that is culturally relevant, you can expect several knockoffs that try to imitate the formula. Games like World of Final Fantasy, Yokai Watch, Temtem, Nexomon, and this article I'm citing mentions a game called Little Friends, Dogs and Cats. Okay. Many of these games have their own spin on the genre Pokemon has created and usually find some footing in new mechanics or added depth within a variety of areas in the Pokemon formula. Some games really hold their own and have a long history, like Digimon, which came into fruition extremely close to the conceptualization of Pokemon and has digivolved into a fairly successful series with multiple anime, manga, and video games. See what I did there? Yeah. But the frequency of these games based around the Pokemon formula having enough of the charm and depth to keep a dedicated Pokemon fan hooked was few and far between. So naturally, when I heard that Capcom was going to be making a new Monster Hunter game centered around the capturing of monsters for your party, I was less than intrigued. In fact, I think the only thing I was really interested in were these giant amiibos you could buy with some of the main characters mounting their monsties. Yes, monsties, they babified the name monster, but honestly, these amiibos were very high quality, and as someone who collects Monster Hunter figures, I really had to have them. However, like many fans, I didn't actually have an interest in playing what looked like a glorified Pokemon knockoff, and while I did plan on at least trying it eventually, it fell off my radar and wouldn't be until a few weeks ago that I actually decided to give it a shot and see what I was missing. Monster Hunter Rise is on the way, and with it a sequel to Monster Hunter Stories that's going to be on the Switch. Now seems like the perfect time to not only look into Stories and its features, but see if those features hold up in a time where Pokemon still dominates the market. Monster Hunter Stories is a pocket monster role-playing game originally released in Japan only for the 3DS on October 8th, 2016, with the HD mobile version released December 4th, 2017. I remember thinking that something like this would never actually make it over to the West in a time where Monster Hunter was getting more popular, but was still considered fairly niche. Much to my surprise, it would be about a year later on September 8th, 2017 that the West would be able to get their hands on this game for the 3DS, and over a year later for mobile devices. I was shocked as this was a time before world and the cultural expansion of Monster Hunter as a series. The game revolves around you, a rider, exploring the world with your party of monsties. Unlike Pokemon, you actually fight alongside your monster and can go up against 1, 2, or 3 monsters at a time. Capturing monsters is a little more involved than you might be used to, requiring the acquisition of monster eggs that you can later hatch back at one of your home camp or city areas. The storyline has the player going around to various locations on the world map and righting the wrongs of specific individuals. I actually won't be going too far into the storyline within this video, but the main issue to be dealt with is the Black Blight, which is turning monsters incredibly hostile and feral, similar to the Frenzy virus in Monster Hunter 4. The game has several staple Monster Hunter features such as character customization, weapon and armor forging, upgrading, and several other mechanics, but generally simplified for a younger audience. So let's start things off with the battle system. From a surface level observation, it's pretty much like a rock, paper, scissors game. You hit the big monster with an attack and he comes right back at you with his own. Oh, but your attack trumps his, so you win, but still take damage in many cases. We've seen this in games before with series like Fire Emblem and their weapon triangle, which is just a glorified way of saying rock, paper, scissors. I see you, Nintendo, you're not fooling me into playing little baby games. You aren't gonna get me to do it. Not again. Players have red, blue, and green options when it comes to attacking, for power, speed, and technical attacks respectively. But it's a little deeper than that. Well, not a little actually, it's a huge chasm of depth and I wasn't expecting it at all. The player character can use these basic attacks throughout the fight or pay kinship points to use special skills. These skills have a range of functionality from buffs to ailments to extra damage, with some belonging to a specific attack color or having no color at all. If the player attacks a monster with a colored ability and the monster attacks them with one of the 3 colored options as well, a head-to-head event will take place and the rock, paper, scissors mechanic will take effect. Power beats technical, technical beats speed, and speed beats power. The victor of that head-to-head takes less damage, outputs more damage, and gains kinship points to be used for skills. During all of this, the player's Monstie will be attacking on its own, similar to Persona 3 before they realized it was a crucial mechanic to allow the player to control their party, so Mitsuru isn't over there spamming Marin Karen for no reason. Luckily, kinship points aren't just for the player, they're even more useful by allowing the rider to select which abilities their monster will use. See, unlike Pokemon, you don't actively choose the move of your Monstie every turn, instead you must pay to do so. And I know that sounds insane to someone that has only ever played every Pokemon game their entire life for 28 years, me, but it helps add a level of depth and choice to the game that comes at a cost, meaning you really have to be sure you want to spend those points before doing so. While you can't seem to be able to choose which basic attacks your Monstie will use, you can at least have it use a specific special ability, which is extremely useful in helping your monster not lose head-to-heads or dealing consistent damage. If both you and your Monstie use the same color basic attack and trump the enemy monster in a head-to-head, a dual attack will take place, which prevents the enemy from dealing any damage and also offers a larger kinship bonus. Now, the main aspect of kinship is when you get enough points to fill your kinship gauge. At this point, the player can opt to ride their Monstie, which leads to a bunch of additional mechanics. For one, your Monstie can't be knocked out while you're on top of it. However, if it goes down to 1 HP, you'll be knocked off and lose the bonus. By winning head-to-heads, your kinship level will rise from level 1 to a maximum of level 3. Executing the provided kinship attack will be more effective in damage output based on how high your kinship level is at the time. However, be careful, because if you lose 2 head-to-heads while riding, you'll actually be knocked off anyway, similar to if your Monstie lost all of its HP. The main goal when hunting Monsties is to lower their HP to 0, and that's shocking, I know, but stay with me here. Monsters are generally much stronger than your Monstie, and especially stronger than you as a rider. To make up for this, the player can equip various items to their battle pouch and bring them into battle with them. This is actually a really cool setup because it limits the items you can use in battle, forcing you to actually prepare for specific battles instead of having everything readily available to you. Additionally, the player can switch Monsties on the fly for free once per turn, and if knocked out, they lose 1 of 3 life hearts, pick themselves up, and regain full HP. This life heart mechanic is a lot more apparent in rider battles, where the player must remove all 3 of the opponent's hearts in order to win. Throughout these battles, various random mini-games may play where the rider is expected to achieve some sort of goal, like flicking or tapping specific colored circles to beat their opponent. Doing so provides kinship bonuses and free damage. Defeating enemies will provide monster parts which are worth points. Instead of requiring a specific monster part for a specific item set, you instead just need to provide enough points worth of that monster's parts to complete the Forge quest. Doing so automatically unlocks the armor for the player and allows it to be upgraded. By equipping the weapon or armor of the species you are fighting alongside, you'll actually get a discount to kinship costs, most likely through some sort of intimidation factor since you're now wearing the skin of their brothers and sisters in front of them. Have I talked about how dark this game is yet? Now, despite all of this, your Monsties are going to be fairly weak, like really weak. Whether or not you grind them, it doesn't really matter. Well, level does matter, but the real power comes through sacrificing your monsters to the gods like a ritual lamb in order to power up your main party. Yeah, you can actually do that. You can do that. As you're playing through the game, you're going to acquire a lot of monsters, and definitely some duplicates or just more than you'll ever end up using. To make these monsters useful, players can actually sacrifice them in order to transfer a specific trait of the Monstie to another. This is called the ritual of channeling, and while you're technically not killing a monster to do this, you're basically killing a monster to do this. It's gone from your party forever and never to be seen again. Wow, that is kind of dark. What the f***? Monsties have a 3x3 grid of genes, with some slots locked and some slots empty. The filled slots can offer active skills to use in battle or passive abilities. Players can unlock slots with specific items, so all 9 are open to be used, and then customize their Monstie by sacrificing various monsters to it. Let's say I want to power up this Monstie on the left. I can sacrifice the monster on the right to give my first Monstie a specific gene of the second. But I can't choose which slot it goes into. Instead, it must be the same slot of the sacrificial Monstie I'm getting rid of. Now, there are some items that allow you to bestow genes into whatever skill slot you want, but these don't require the ritual and are generally considered much weaker in comparison to what you can get through sacrifice. This might not seem like a big deal, but the biggest bonuses to your Monstie lie in what are called bingos. By creating a row, column, or diagonal of genes on a Monstie, you will activate what is known as a bingo, which provides a boost depending on the type of bingo achieved. If I mismatch a bunch of genes in a row, I'll get a generic bingo bonus. But if I have a diagonal entirely of red genes, I'll get a more specific fire bonus. Then I can get a power bonus in another column, maybe a technical bonus on another row, and really flesh out my creature. Some moves are fairly rare, so it's hard to find a dedicated build for a specific monster, considering the random element of the placement of genes. Instead, players have a better time picking out specific skills they want for their monstie and then building bingos around them after obtaining the abilities. That's pretty complicated, right? Like, I bet you weren't expecting that from a game like this, featuring this dude. Look at him. But it gets even weirder from here. Let's talk about how you actually collect monsties for your party. The main way the player is going to catch monsters is by collecting eggs, and there's various ways to do this. First are generic monster dens, which randomly litter the map of each area. These dens act as small mini dungeons that the player has to traverse in order to make it to an egg nest, and when I say mini dungeons, I mean you run right through it. It's like one room, maybe more, and you're there. They can then search through the egg nest in an attempt to collect an egg. They'll get an egg every time and have the option to try searching again by swapping out the egg they just collected for a new one. Don't like the egg you just picked up, toss it and grab another. Just don't get too greedy, as the nests have a finite amount of gathering attempts. These eggs have specific patterns, and sets of patterns correspond to a specific monster. This means you can compare the patterns with a friend in order to determine if it's one you want, removing part of the guessing element. Don't worry, I know you're gonna pull up a guide online. That's what I did. It was incredibly simple and easy. Rarer monsters like subspecies or very strong monsties generally won't show up in regular dens, but instead within rare dens, which are larger dungeons, usually with more complicated monsters to fight. But again, you just run through them. They're very simple. This is a child's game. If you really want to guarantee you'll catch a specific monstie, you can actually find one on the map and fight it. If you throw a paintball at it close to finishing it off, it will have a chance of retreating. There's actually specific ways to increase this chance per monster, and you can find these details within your Monsterpedia entry after successfully defeating one. When a monster retreats, it creates a new den that has a much higher chance of dropping its specific egg. For example, this is a way you can get a pink Rathian fairly early on in the game. Dory's main focus was all about exploration. It is all about exploration. Ryozo Sugimoto actually stated that the concepts for this RPG were based on the interest of fans wanting to know more about the world's setting and how monsters lived. This fed directly into the design of the maps that are fairly open and large, allowing the player to explore them heavily, whether on foot or while riding one of their monsters. Similar to Pokemon, there are specific obstacles that can only be dealt with through a specific monstie ability. Similar to how a Pokemon needs Surf in order for the player to traverse bodies of water, a specific monstie must have the swim ability to do the same. The difference here is that you do not assign these rider abilities yourself. Instead, specific monsties will have specific moves. For example, Zamtrios can swim, Tigrex can climb vines, Yankuku can break rocks, and Ratha, your personal Rathalos, can fly. These skills are rarely necessary for progressing through the main story, but are crucial in collecting specific items and exploring the map. In fact, there are 100 Poogies to find throughout the game, and many can only be acquired by having a monster with a specific ability. There's many monsties to collect throughout the games, and I'm not going to list them all here. You'll start with a Velocidrome and eventually work your way up to various full party compositions. Early on, you'll even have the ability to catch a red Kezu, which can carry you through the majority of the storyline, or until you unlock Ratha the Rathalos. This is probably where the game is at its strongest and weakest. The main driving factor is trying to collect every monstie, similar to filling up your Pokedex, but there's no heavy incentive in using multiple monsters in battle. Sure, there are elemental weaknesses and advantages, such as using the monstie that prefers speed attacks against a monster that likes to use power attacks, but after 50 hours of gameplay, I can tell you that it was never really necessary. That didn't stop me from collecting everything, however. On top of dens, there are monsters that have specific criteria in order to obtain their egg. Golden Rathian and Silver Rathalos can only be found in the upper floors of an endgame dungeon, or through a special DLC quest, and a special Great Poogie monster is only obtained by collecting all 100 Poogies in the game. Yeah, I spent 5 hours collecting all of these. He's my child, and I would die for him. Through updates, a few unlisted monsties were added as well. Players can collect Orochi Kirin, Molten Tigrex, and White Monoblos through special DLC quests offered through the repeatable quest board found in most hub areas. In fact, in the Western release, Kirin and Orochi Kirin are the only Elder Dragons that the player can obtain. Glavenus is actually obtainable as well through the online battle system. By taking part and winning in specific online battles, players would be rewarded with special egg fragments which they could put together in order to hatch Glavenus. With online battle servers offline, the player is automatically rewarded with egg fragments each time they try to find a battle, making it incredibly easy to get unlimited Glavenus if they choose to. A weird way of going about it, but I'm just happy they didn't lock players out of content by shutting down the servers. There's even a Puzzle and Dragons collaboration where players can take part in a special offline tournament event, fighting through several riders in order to be rewarded with a Kurenai Gokaimi egg. Who is that? I couldn't tell you, and I really don't care. Puzzles and Dragons suck shit. Most of these special monsters also came with special kinship attack animations to incentivize the player using them in battle. And Molten Tigrex was also just incredibly overpowered. The 3DS edition of the game allowed the player to get a special Zelda-themed armor set and obtain Epona as a monstie, but this wouldn't make it over to the mobile releases for, obvious reasons. Thanks, Nintendo. While there are certain monsters that aren't obtainable, you can still run into and fight many extra enemies. Kushala, Teostra, and even Fatalis are all available to fight in the endgame and provide high-end armor and weapon sets. A specific Japanese update that didn't make it to the West would even allow some of these monsters to be collected in the future. Kushala, Teostra, Rajang, Ignactor, and several other monsters that appeared in the game but couldn't be caught would obtain special quests that allowed the player to grab them. We also didn't get the Kumamon collaboration, which allowed players to unlock a special Arzuros monster called Kumashira. These updates came with other additional features such as further customization of the player character, like making them look similar to other main characters from the storyline. Speaking of the storyline, this game is oddly dark for something marketed towards kids, like seriously dark. Did I mention it was dark? Because it's ridiculous. Small spoiler alert, but the storyline starts with a blighted Nargacuga attacking the player's village, blinding a baby Rathalos in one eye, and killing one of the main kid's moms in front of him, causing him to go through a personal trauma and hatred that drives him through the majority of the storyline. This basically translates into him turning into a Sasuke clone and unlocking some sort of Super Saiyan fiery hairstyle while riding the new unique dragon monster in the game. On top of that, it touches on the morality of hunting as a concept. While the player character still hunts and kills monsters alongside their monstie companions, there's a bond that forms between a rider and their monstie. As the player explores the world, they run into various hunters who don't understand the concept of a rider and even try to hunt Ratha. I mean, who can really blame them though? It'd be like walking into a 7-Eleven with your pet lion you found in a forest for some reason. How did you even get a lion? It's some surface level observations to say the least, but the fact that they even touched on the morality of hunting something you could live side by side with was incredibly mind-blowing to me. I didn't expect it at all. Now the main villain, Dr. Manalger, even finds a way to armor and control various monsters within the game. It's pretty messed up how he controls them and essentially sends them to their death through fighting you. I always thought this was a particularly interesting concept because they oddly resemble the Equal Dragon Weapon, a concept from Monster Hunter's development that many fans are familiar with. Yo, Equal Dragon Weapon for Monster Hunter Stories 2? Capcom? Upon completing the main storyline, the player unlocks several things. The first is high rank dens and monsters. High rank monsters are generally enemies you already fought, but now with higher level stats. But this also unlocks high rank dens and high rank rare dens where the player has a better chance of collecting rarer monsters to help finish up their Monsterpedia. 2 dungeons are unlocked as well, the first being the Labyrinth of Ordeals. This was a pretty lazy inclusion, which essentially consists of the player traversing a randomized collection of areas they've already explored and getting some rare material rewards and good EXP within. We've seen it before. Tales of Vesperia did it. I'm sure other games have done it. It's boring. This location will always have either Kushala, Teostra, or Fatalis as a boss at the very end, but Fatalis isn't unlocked right away. The second dungeon to traverse is the Tower, a familiar setting from past Monster Hunter games. It consists of 50 levels, with a fast travel location on every 10 floors. This is more similar to a boss gauntlet or challenge mode, where the player must traverse 10 floors at a time without the ability to go back. Doing so unlocks a checkpoint and various rewards per floor. On floor 19, you'll fight a gold Rathian and be rewarded with an egg, and on floor 29, a silver Rathalos. Further up, you'll fight against a double Kirin squad, which is just... And then floor 49, where you'll run into a Rajang and Ivory Legaia Cruise combo that is also just pure frustration. I can't tell you how many hours I ended up sinking into this game. Oh wait, I think I already did, and it was around 50. Huh. Well, anyway, I can definitely say I never expected to put that much time into what I thought was a glorified Pokemon clone. What I got, however, was a rather in-depth Monster Hunter turn-based strategy game that took a lot of inspiration from collectible RPG games like Pokemon and even Shin Megami Tensei, believe it or not. Bet you never thought you'd see someone compare a Monster Hunter title to SMT. It's fun, oddly dark in its themes, and really keeps Monster Hunter's aesthetic. Just don't blame me whenever you have to fight the double Kieran battle in the tower. The game's rather cheap on mobile devices, and I'd actually call the mobile release the definitive way to play the game. Sure, you're missing Epona, but it's in HD and allows you to up the battle speed to ×2 or ×3, which is especially helpful when grinding or when trying to get through the game so you can release a video on time. If you like this video, be sure to let me know in the comments and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, just wait. I'm coming for you. I'm going to get you. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.